So, for me, having discovered that there's a singular moment of origin for the entire subjective experience of all people, that every single trigger that a person has is just repeating in every moment of their life, and they live within this subjective paradigm where every single trigger is already creating a generalized, imperceptible anxiety, like a wild animal walking through the forest on the lookout for lions, tigers, and bears. The human being is on the lookout for, I'm not good enough, something's wrong with me, broken, abandoned, worthless, hopeless, I don't matter, confusion, failures. Without knowing this becomes the permanent tunnel vision. And it is really just maintained through the sympathetic nervous system and the collapse of consciousness that it produces in animals as animals fixate on external threats. But see, the human being became an internal threat where the something's wrong with me is the original trigger of a 4-year-old child. And in that moment, it has no connection to reality because the something's wrong with me is the transformation of the animal fight or flight reaction, which is always something's wrong. But the something's wrong is the animal outside of the animal, the other animal. But for the child with language, the child already has a me. And so this rapid state change provokes them to think there's something wrong with themselves, and they have a life or death fear. And the life or death fear is projected onto the adults, where now the adults are transformed into an animalistic fear of death. And the child feels paralyzed and confused. They cannot fight, they cannot run, and they cannot intervene. And they will have cascading thoughts of not good enough, broken. They will feel abandoned and alone because now there's no caregiver to take care of them. And their parents are transformed into something they're afraid of forever. And so as a compensatory mechanism, the child will think, gotta figure it out, gotta be perfect for mom and dad so I can be good enough. And good enough now becomes the instrument of avoidance of abandonment for all human beings. And because this abandonment fear is connected to fight or flight, life or death, all human beings fear disappointment like death. They fear failure like death. And now we see the implications of the evolutionary conundrum between a conscious being having a central nervous system with the vestigial fight or flight reaction having not yet evolved out because language came on so fast overnight. And so while this was a useful tool for human beings without language, when children have the ability to say me and you and I, when they have that first fight or flight, they are all going to think there's something wrong with them, no different than you drinking a sip of coffee that is loaded with drugs. If you were to drink coffee loaded with adrenaline, you would be at the ER thinking there's something wrong with you. Well, that's what happens to all children when the central nervous system involuntarily evokes a fight or flight just because a parent yelled at another parent or yelled at them or any other shocking experience. And without exception, every child creates the first artificial guilt trip. And what you find is that it doesn't even matter what happened because it's an inevitable happening, that there's going to be something loud, there's going to be something spilled, there's going to be something broken. And every single human trigger exists because of one singular moment. And it becomes an inescapable paradox that keeps a human in tunnel vision for the rest of their life. That they cannot escape the something's wrong with me because it's triggered by life outside. The not good enough is triggered by life outside. And so when you get triggered, you become the embodiment of something's wrong or not good enough, and it shrinks you, it collapses you into somebody that experiences yourself as not good enough. And now you think you need to self-improve. It's like stepping on a tin can, and then the tin can thinks it's, not good enough. And the tin can spends the rest of its life trying to stretch itself back to just being normal. And so in the human being, this creates a limited range emotion where their thought process is always fixated on problems and getting this fixed and that test coming up and my wife this and husband that and friends and family. And so We live in this illusory world of fixing and changing ourselves, where psychology is stuck within that as well, looking back at itself through the same kaleidoscope of triggers. We have tried to solve the riddle of the human mind without recognizing that the riddle is the solution itself, that the something's wrong with me is the something, that the reason you experience feeling not good enough is because of the experience of being not good enough that is triggered arbitrarily. And since this is a universal paradigm that all human beings experience, it has never been acknowledged for its complete fallacy. It is an abnormality, and it causes all mental health problems, all dissociative disorders, all depressions, all anxieties, all repetitive reactionary behaviors, all inabilities to coexist, all dogma, all group thinking, all us versus them, all me versus you, and this whole flight to nothing, where we are going to build and build and build while we destroy, destroy, destroy. Every crusade, every entitlement, every righteous perspective in defying reality. Human beings live in an overarching fight or flight that becomes the entire life that you all have, and we all create a yellow brick road to a happy future, a future of success, a future of love, that we have to invent to try to escape the inescapable, repetitive reactionary paradigm of the subjective human experience or ego. That what we're trying to do is become good enough, fix and change ourselves, heal, figure out what is wrong, overcome the broken, so that we can finally prove ourselves, to our parents, to society, to fit in, to belong, to get the validation that is going to try to fix and change my own feelings of self that I have no control over, in an inescapable battle to try to feel valid, to feel valued, to find the love, failing to see that the fight or flight reaction is simply just being triggered and overpowering the already existing love that is always and always there. And so this yellow brick road and this voice in the head is the maintenance of the human subjective experience. It's why when people come into our world that have seen outside the boundaries of this, we nail them to crosses, or we shoot them for saying the table of brotherhood, where their white and black people could sit together and the content of your character should be more relevant than the color of your skin. Well, that is a radical thing to say in a world where the status quo is segregation. And so being somebody like me, who's always seen outside of the box, has brought about profound negation, profound envy, profound misunderstanding, profound sabotage and jealousy. And now it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter if it's a people pleaser or narcissist, that the more I learn, the more the same I become, the more different I become to other people, that my ideas and thoughts are so accurate, yet so negated, so relegated to irrelevance and so ignored, that the more I've learned, the more I've lost everyone. That, people would rather be in defense of their victimhood and their entitlement to using their traumatic past experiences to explain why they can't function as an adult than to explore the notion that a single conversation could set them free because somebody actually did the work to discover exactly how to produce enlightenment through the lens of modern psychology and explaining early childhood development and the implications of the fight or flight reaction is creating the entire human experience. That we have been trying to solve this riddle, and I've solved it in totality with the most accurate view of early childhood development, physiology, and an ability to explain enlightenment as merely a relaxation of the fight or flight mechanism that causes the tunnel vision to collapse, exposing somebody to the full breadth of who they truly are. And in a world where I can say that is a world where I am destroyed for doing it. And that's the challenge. That's my challenge.